Thank you again for everybody who came out this morning and for everybody watching at home. Looking forward to our panels today, but first and foremost, Congressman, thank you so much for joining us. So we're going to start off with a conversation about fraud and scam protection, which is something that I know both of you two care a lot about and spend a lot of your time in the House working on. So, to kick it off with a general question, and I want to hear both of your perspectives on this, but we could start with you, Congressman Foster. How have the nature of scams and fraud related to banks and financial services changed over the past few years as the technology that people use to manage their money, hold their money, grow their money have changed as well?
Yeah, well, it's moved online, I guess, is the one sentence answer to that. The tool at hand really to prevent identity fraud, which is really at the heart of all scams, these digital driver's licenses, mobile ID, that are being rolled out. The standards are actually for that were all set back in about 10 years ago at NIST. They've been adopted by the International Standards Organization, and now the EU, the UK, countries all around the world are adopting the ISO standards that are effectively the NIST standards and as digital driver's licenses. And that's why Android and iOS actually interoperate, because they've all adopted those standards. Because there's sort of two problems in identity theft, which is the core of the matter. If it's an easy thing if someone shows up in person. When you show up at TSA has a pretty easy job. They have to say, okay, are you presenting a real valid passport or ID or real ID? And is that your picture on it? It's a much more complicated thing if someone comes in with an internet claiming they are Bill Foster, because then sort of the best you can do is to say, okay, first off, this person is presenting the digital version of a passport or a real ID compliant driver's license. And so they're a legally traceable person, then, and it is being presented on the cell phone that is associated with that digital ID. And thirdly, that cell phone is telling me that it has just completed or recently completed the biometric login, that someone has smiled at the cell phone and confirmed that, at least to the best of the cell phone's ability, it is in the possession of its rightful owner. And so those three things, when combined, are sort of the best you can do for proving you are who you say you are online. And if we get that incorporated in our modern economy, basically as soon as possible, that's the best first line of defense against this.
There's probably too much trust in the system, right? In IT in general. We've done banking over the years, and pay your bills when you get a notice, get something in the mail, you pay the bill, you might check, but you don't, because it comes in consistently. But what we're not prepared for is the type of cleverness of the fraudsters and the scammers. Because I think everybody in the room has probably either been attempted to be scammed, or you know someone very close to you, or your son, your daughter, your mom, your grandfather. And so it's just wildly prevalent. And yet at the same time, the companies that are involved in facilitating it, that's the wrong word, in enabling it unintentionally, banks, social media, telecoms, are doing a lot. We had a roundtable the other day. I mean, the level of resources that they're pouring into to try to defeat this, to mitigate it, to find it out, prevent, and then inform law enforcement is significant. But it keeps getting worse. So they have to do more. There are things social media accounts for almost something like 50% of the fraud and scams that take place. They enable it via websites. Check fraud is prevalent. Telecom, you're getting texts from EasyPass. Hey, pay your EasyPass. It's you owe $8.99. Put in your credit card right now, or you're going to lose your license within 24 hours. And some of these are coming from international criminal organizations, very, very involved, sophisticated organizations, and some of them are just occurring domestically. So it's a little bit of a challenge to catch them. because they move, right? I mean, where it's not like a bank robber and you chase them down the street and catch them. So I think everybody's stepping up. We're definitely stepping up. The education of consumers in general. Some banks are doing it great. Some banks aren't doing it so well as far as informing and educating their customer base what to do, what not to do, what not to fall for. Social media, the same thing. I'll acknowledge that Google, for instance, seems far and away done more to prevent scams and shall we say. Their block rate is a lot higher for allowing scams than some of the other social medias. But I think we're kind of waking up to it more than before. But again, what they've already done is impressive. And I think you may be aware the DOJ just started a strike force that should be pretty meaningful as well.
So when it comes to the things that the federal government can do, let's start with the enforcement side on the strike force side. Do you feel like the federal government has enough information and enough visibility into how these scam networks are operating based on the fact that, as you said, they're constantly moving, they can target people through text messages, emails? Do you think there's enough of a federal eye into what's going on here?
No. We could, but we haven't uncovered it all and utilized all of the law enforcement resources of FinCEN, for instance, on the international basis, for illicit finance, the FBI, the DOJ, the Secret Service, Treasury. We need to uncover it better and respond to it faster.
Congressman Foster, what do you think on the long
Look at all of this stuff, all the scams you talked about stop the moment when someone attempts to send me a text message. You say, okay, prove you are who you say you are. People can send me an email or a text message, but if they're unwilling to present digital proof that they are a legally traceable person from a country that I can extradite them from, they can send it to me and I'll put it in my spam filter, because that is almost certainly what it is. I mean, how many of you even read the contents of your spam filter? Okay. And that's because we're already completely dependent on the best AI, Google's AI, if you use Gmail, that tries its best to identify these things, but they morph on a minute-by-minute basis. And for high-value transactions, you simply can't trust the identity unless there's a positive proof. And again, the tool at hand for that are trusted electronics in your cell phone associated with a national ID. A real ID, a passport, something similar to that. Other countries get this, and the UK, after decades of resisting it, has acknowledged recently that they have to do it too to join the EU. I think, and it's amazing how that just enables a flowering ecosystem of financial products. If you look at the incredible thing that's happened in India. In India, there are more than 1 billion people that have digital ID and bank accounts. And if you want to give a beggar 3 rupees, you both get out your cell phone, smile at your cell phone, authenticate, and authenticate your bank account and transfer 3 rupees from your account to his, 0 fees. Okay, and this is as inclusive a system as you can imagine. And it's working for billions of people. But what they do not have is that system being abused for ransomware. Because if they have the ability to go, if a fraud has been perpetrated, you can go to a judge or trusted criminal justice system and figure out who it was behind that ransomware. So it is not completely anonymous, all right? And that is a crucial part of it, that there is a trusted government. Now, you can argue about whether the Indians have that right on the level of trust in their government, but we've navigated that in the case of the normal banking system. In the U.S., under most circumstances, bank-to-bank transfers are pretty anonymous. But if the government can, shows there's a real suspicion and there's a real investigation from a system we trust, they can figure out where your bank transfers are going and who's on the other end of them. And that's crucial. And in Scandinavian countries, for example, every time a government official looks at your data, you get a little message on your citizenship app that some bureaucrat has looked at your data, all right? Which is a pretty solid way of knowing that your privacy is not being abused and your government can be trusted. So I think there's a lot to learn from where the rest of the world is going on here, both from the point of view of getting a financial system that's much more efficient and has a higher level of trust in it, and from the sort of very strong privacy requirements that I think people are going to demand.
Congressman Meuser, what do you think about the idea of implementing something like that in the United States?
Sounds like it works, and it will be helpful. I mean, let's face it. You call, they ask you your mother's maiden name, things like that, right? I mean, that's sort of rudimentary compared to what could be done and is being done successfully elsewhere. So it's probably not just necessary, but critical to have such
a huge example of that was the COVID identity fraud. You know, the U.S. taxpayer lost between $200 and $300 billion during COVID. A lot of it going to North Korean and Chinese hackers, with people claiming unemployment insurance benefits and things like that, and COVID benefits. And that did not happen in countries that had a secure digital ID. They said, hey, your app said, hey, you're eligible for some sort of COVID benefit check. Log in, smile at your phone, authenticate to your bank account, and boop, your COVID benefit check went there and nowhere else. And that stopped the North Korean hackers cold, because if they can steal 1 million passwords, but unless they also steal 1 million cell phones and can do the biometric login on those stolen cell phones, they're out of business. And it's, this is, it's something our office has been working on for, most of a decade now, ever since the great work at NIST. There's a big push by this administration, which I agree with, which having U.S. standards adopted for artificial intelligence. There's a huge advantage. And the next frontier here is agentic AI. Because the standards for my agents talking to your agents are being written as we are. It's basically chaos. There are multiple competing standards. And I think one very useful government role should be to convene everyone, probably at NIST again, to come up with standards for what it means to have my agent talk to your agent. So that the very first thing they'll do is they'll come down and do the equivalent of scrolling down and hit I accept. That will understand when they start talking to each other. What are the privacy understandings? What are the data retention understandings? What are the if it goes off the rails legally, do we go into arbitration? Do we go into a legal system of Lithuania or where? And all of that stuff can and should happen under the hood for the agentic communication that I think everyone agrees is going to be the next step in financial services.
So when it comes to so the idea of just jumping back a little bit to the national ID, do you encounter any potential obstacles in trying to convince people that this will help their privacy and security if it would require them to register certain biometric information, raise the specter that there might be another venue through which somebody could access information they don't want? That balance between access and security, how do you think you could strike that, both technologically and in terms of the political argument you make when you're trying to get skeptics on board with this?
Well, yeah, okay, yeah, thank you. This is, look, traditionally, anytime you present something that sort of smells like a national ID card, you get the ACLU jumping down your throat from the left, and you get sort of these Red Dawn people, if you know what I mean. I'm jumping down your throat from the right, the libertarian right. But the vast majority of people in the middle just want a system that is reasonably secure and reasonably private and very trustworthy. And so that's the first thing. And what's changed, I think, is that people are sick and tired of spending the afternoon on hold changing all of their credit cards and magazine subscriptions because someone's stolen their numbers. All right, and the biometrics, which are a crucial thing. First off, the NIST standards very cleverly said, okay, only store your biometric login information in your cell phone. Now, for example, even the thumbprint reader on some cell phones, the data for the whorls and the shape of your thumbprint never leaves the chip underneath the reader. Only an encrypted summary gets transferred to the CPU in your cell phone. So even if you're eavesdropping on the communication between the thumbprint reader chip and the CPU, you have no idea what the cell phone is, what the thumbprint is. It is just so it's a very well thought out system that sort of maximizes privacy. then there is a need at some point to store biometrics somewhere from the point of view of preventing what's called civil fraud, where you have one person sets up multiple identities. And the thing that people have come to trust for that is to have the biometrics there held by the individual states. You know, everyone who has a driver's license or a state ID understands that their state is holding a picture of them, a high-resolution picture of them that you know, that can be trusted and can be used to figure out if you're getting a driver's license in Illinois when you already are operating one in New Jersey and New York. And so, you know, and that is the compromise we've come to. I guess it's because for some reason everyone really trusts the cybersecurity of, you know, North Dakota, but that's the way it is. And so it's something that you don't have to change anything. We already have for the Real ID system in the United States, something that pretty much, you know, accomplishes the purpose of a national ID card without actually having a national ID card. Same thing happens in other countries. In Germany, for example, all of their different federal states, you know, they hold the biometrics, and, you know, because I guess no one trusts the Bavarians or whatever it is. And so that individual states hold the biometrics, and then they get together to make sure you're not operating IDs in multiple states. And so it's a solved problem. It's a little bit clunky, but it does work, and it allows you to have the benefits of, a universal, unique identifier. You know, they don't advertise it a lot, but the Real ID is actually associated with a social security number, and so that it's from a computer. I'm sort of a computer guy, and you can't really build a database without a database key, and that's your social security number or a bunch of proxies that we have for it, and it's it's really essential that you have a unique identifier.
See, having a PhD in physics from Harvard is very useful in Congress.
Exactly. Congressman Meuser, what's your perspective on those issues?
That sounds like a leap forward, and these things are important. It probably doesn't need to be compelled, right? It could be something, if you want to have this level of safety and, you know, allow our society to get used to it. Some businesses may be the ones to pursue it, and that's what we're trying to do right now with our fraud and scam work that we're engaged in. You know, we're holding meetings, and, you know, I described some of it, but our first roundtable was the private sector. As I was mentioning, you know, various from telecoms to banks, of course, J.P. Morgan, Meta, you name it. We had a great group. Our next roundtable, and you're very welcome, is public DOJ, FBI, FCC, that group, as to what they can bring to, what we must bring to the table and work on. So we really don't want a government-led initiative, right? It needs to be holistic from a society basis and government basis. And don't get me wrong, though, this isn't something that's new. I mean, scams have been going on for a while, and many great organizations have put, and the government has put resources to combat it. It just it's just getting worse. And even with the resources going towards it. So there's a big education initiative. Like, I don't know if I mentioned, I'm even running public service announcements throughout my district, and many other members. Our chairman, French Hill, is doing it now throughout Arkansas, on what to look for, what not to do, you know, et cetera. We're putting together. We had a hearing on it. And we had people that come in from the Aspen Group, for instance. I just tend to quote what they had to say. It's just unbelievable, the level of international criminality and the amount of scams that take place, as well as how harmful it is. I mean, this isn't data. This isn't a bill. I mean, people are really suffering because of this. I mean, there's a high suicide rate. When someone gets scammed for $30,000, they're just so upset with themselves. They can't believe that they did that. If I travel, they're doing different on news. The news is doing different, segments on this person was scammed. Watch out for that scam. So it's really just becoming that much more, I don't know about mainstream, but affecting that many more people. So we've got that, and then we need to educate. Again, I mentioned earlier, some banks are reducing their scams. It's not increasing. So a lot of that is through informing and what to do, what not to do. Secondly, we need to bring in, we need to have, where it's being enabled, recognize that their block rates, 95% block rate of a scammer is not very good. In fact, it's terrible. It should be close to, like 1 in a million, as opposed to the number of sites or requests that they get. And with AI and everything else, and who knows, maybe we are going to need some legislation that says if you don't maintain a certain block rate, or even if you don't, the number of reports that come in, and if you get 1,100 reports of scams on a particular website, that site should be halted for 30 days and be put under review. Now, they'll tell you all they'll do is head to another site, but okay, but at least we know who they are, and we can track them down. And that's why I was really happy to see the strike force take place over at the DOJ that I understand Janine Pirro is heading up along with others. So we will meet with them. And then there's the enforcement, right? We've got to catch some of these people and make examples of them, so it's clear that there's going to be significant penalties surrounding this. Google, for instance, just had uncovered a huge scam network, fraud network called Lighthouse out of Burma. And what these wonderful people were doing was they were literally bringing in, making slaves of people, human trafficking, and having them, hundreds, if not thousands of individuals engaged in creating scam initiatives on primarily the United States and Europe. And Google had a lot to do with uncovering that. So there's progress being made. Things can be done now. But certainly what Bill's talking about really should be the next step, the next level.
And on the business-facing side of that too, it's one thing to have an ID to say, this is Sylvan Lee, this is, who he is. But let's say I get a text, like you were saying from EasyPass saying, or allegedly EasyPass saying, my license is going to be suspended if I don't pay, $200 right now. Is there something either the government or society can employ on the business side that shows that person, yes, this is EasyPass, this is Pepco, this is whatever utility or agency that you actually need to be interfacing with? Or is it a matter of procedure in that, you don't just, necessarily give your information out over the phone or one way or another like that? Is there, something on the business side that you think should or can be enforced that way?
I think they're pulling together more collaboration and creating, like our suggestion was, an association of anti-fraud, so they could share best initiatives, best models. But they need to do it, and frankly, if they don't, our job is oversight, investigations, and to protect the general welfare. If they don't, I would suggest that requirements and legislation would follow.
Yeah, and I think the essential government role here is to provide, the registry of businesses that are for real, and how they digitally identify themselves. And same thing for people, so that when your grandma gets a text message from some romance scam, the very first thing that happens is whatever app she displays the text message on should filter that and say, that's interesting. This text message says they're from in New Jersey, and in fact they're from Mexico or wherever. They're not who they say they are, and that should just be built in to all these things. That only works if there is somewhere a registry of unique people who are legally registered and ultimately extraditable, and if there's a similar registry for businesses. If you're getting contacted by a business, there has to be a legally traceable path to find out who that is, and if they're not who they say they are, to go and punish them or at least blacklist them. Once you've done that, if you have basically what they call in banking the KYC, know your customer system automated, then that's a huge cost savings for everyone in financial services, whether it's small community banks or giant banks or fintech startups. One of their biggest costs is doing the KYC process. It was costing, during COVID, it was costing something like $400 a person to have someone open a bank account who'd never had one done before, and never bank account before. And once you've done that, once in your life, you go into the Department of Motor Vehicles and you get your picture taken with a high-res picture and prove you are who you say you are, get your cell phone registered with that real ID. You do that once, and then you can use that again and again when you open a new bank account. It should take 30 seconds, where basically the bank says, okay, get out your cell phone, present your digital ID with the biometric login, using the biometrics in your cell phone, and then they will check with FinCEN, the federal government, that agency that has a list of bad actors, and if you're not on that list of bad actors, boom, open the account. And providing some sort of legal safe harbor for businesses that are willing to transact that way. And it's optional. If people want to go and live off the grid like the Unabomber and do everything with paper, they're welcome to. But then understand it's going to take you a few days to open a bank account while we do the paper trail check to find out if the paper documents that you presented are real, and it's just not going to move as fast.
Congressman Meuser, we're just about out of time. So, given that you're used to doing these PSAs in your district, what do you think is one thing that the folks watching at home should know or keep in mind about how to either spot or protect or prevent being the victim of a scam like the ones we were talking about today?
Pause, review, hang up, call an official phone number. If something is on text, call again, easy pass, that sort of thing. Hang up and look at the official phone numbers and exactly how to get a hold of that directly, not having them call you. You call them. Just be on guard. I hate to say caveat emptor, but that's usually said in a more positive way. Here we really need to be diligent. We want to, in government, we want to alert folks to it, but as well deal with it and do everything we can to compel our businesses to put those resources towards it. When I was in business, I won't get into the product, but we'd have believe it or not, we'd have a recall on occasion, right? And when you have a recall, you gotta leap to. You're not instructed. You get in trouble if you don't, if it's that bad. But you gotta jump to it. You've got to take care of your customers. You gotta take this on yourself, and it's good business in the end. But it's also the right thing to do. So here we have these instances taking place with. I'll just go back to social media for a second, because a lot of it comes from there. They need to stop it. They need to engage in it. They need to have a recall of that, where that part of their business is causing harm to the general public. And, they must, and they need to do it better. And if they don't, we'll do our thing. We'll be dragging them into hearings, and we'll go public on it, and we'll establish legislation that who knows, they might not like. But we're not going to allow this to continue to get worse, or we're going to do our very best to keep it from happening.
Well, Congressman Meuser, Congressman Foster, I'm looking forward to seeing the progress you two and your colleagues in Congress and the administration are able to make on that front. Thank you two so much for joining us today, and I really appreciate you taking the time.
Thank you.